Hi, this is Jack Daleske with the Grand Rapids Public Museum, and with me is Dr. Brent Bos, a NASA scientist and our guest here. He'll be speaking to some different school groups, and he'll be speaking to the Chaffee Scholarship Dinner Thursday night. Thank you so much for coming here, Brent.
You're welcome. Happy to be here. Great to be back in Western Michigan.
Yeah, and so I started off and I wanted to ask you about growing up in Western Michigan, and how did that influence your journey into working at NASA?
Well, I really became inspired to have a career in space exploration after I visited the Grand Rapids Public Museum and the Chaffee Planetarium as a second grader. We had an enrichment class that a small group of us came to, and we came to the old location, and there was a old kind of solar system with the planets going around the sun, which I just thought was fascinating. And then we were able to sit through a really interesting planetarium presentation, which kind of blew my mind, and that excitement and interest just never left me. And so I went on to study physics at the University of Michigan and went and got my PhD at the University of Arizona, and was able and fortunate enough to get a position at NASA, and I've been there now for over 21 years.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing your story about your journey to becoming a researcher at NASA. Can you tell us about maybe one of the most exciting or most surprising discoveries over your career?
So each mission has always had something interesting associated with it. I think a mission that's still going on, we're almost finishing up the OSIRIS-REx asteroid sample return mission. The fact that the asteroid we visited, Bennu, turned out to be an active asteroid, that was a big surprise to everyone, even in the planetary sciences community at large, because asteroids aren't generally thought of as being active. It's comets, right, when they get close to the sun, and they heat up and they generate an atmosphere in a coma. So when we found out that asteroid, that Bennu was an active asteroid, that was really exciting. Being part of Mars Pathfinder very early on, that was when I was a graduate student, and really starting to put together the story that there was once water on Mars, and where did it go? Did it all go into space? Is it some of it's still there? And some of that work I did on Phoenix showed that no, there's still a lot of water on Mars. So there's always a highlight. Every mission has something interesting, but those are probably some of the more interesting things that I've been involved with.
If I remember correctly, one of the surprising things about OSIRIS-REx is that the asteroid Bennu was so much less dense than what a lot of people would expect. It's not nearly as solid as what people would think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. In fact, there was a whole series or range of opinions on what Bennu was going to look like before we got to it. There was some indication that it maybe wasn't as solid based on the measurements we had before we got there. So when we were planning to acquire the sample, we really had to take into all that variability, all that potential differences in how the surface was going to react. Unfortunately, we were able to come up with contingency plans for everything that we could think of. And sure enough, Bennu ended up being really weak, just a conglomeration really held together by gravity. And so it's fortunate we didn't bury ourselves when we tried to actually land on the surface. But we were able to successfully get our sample, and they're going to be coming back here in September, which is exciting.
Good thing you have those contingency plans.
That's right.
So I understand that OSIRIS-REx, it's on its way back to Earth right now with some of those asteroid samples. Can you tell us a little bit about the future of the mission?
So the mission will deliver those samples on September 24 in Utah at the government proving grounds that's controlled by the U.S. Army, called the Dugway Proving Grounds. And so it's only part of the spacecraft that's going to come back, the part that has the samples. It's going to land via parachute in Utah, and then the sample return capsule itself, we won't open the sample even in Utah. It'll be transported via truck and then via plane to Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas, which is where now we keep all of the material we've collected from space. The Apollo moon rocks are there. Some samples we're getting from a Japanese asteroid mission are there. The samples we're eventually going to get from Mars, which is another mission that I'm working on right now. They all will go there. And so the samples will go there, and then it'll be opened under carefully controlled circumstances. And there'll be an opportunity for researchers around the world to propose to NASA to get a little bit of those samples for their own analyses in their laboratories. back here on Earth, which is why you want to do sample return in the first place, because it's too difficult and it would take way too much mass to send a whole laboratory to one of these bodies, either a planet or an asteroid. So we bring the samples back here so that we can study them in more detail than what you ever could in situ in space. And in fact, the other thing it does is it allows you to be responsive when new technology develops. So things that we haven't even thought about doing with the samples or technology that's unavailable right now, in the future we'll have enough sample waiting for that new technology to be applied, and we'll be able to learn new things from it.
That's so exciting. Over the next 2 days, you're going to be meeting with some school groups. What kind of message do you want to share with the students?
When I meet with students, first of all, I really like to try to get them excited about what we're doing at NASA and about science in general, and encourage them to study science and math. Those are the key things. But of course, you have to do well in all of your subjects. But math and science are the key things. And we're really hoping to inspire the next generation, because we want to keep exploring space. We want to keep putting humanity's footprint out beyond just the Earth. And to do that, we need the next generations to follow up and continue the work that we've started.
That's really exciting. And part of that is, of course, the Roger B. Chaffee Scholarship. And so tomorrow night you will be the keynote speaker for the Chaffee Scholarship Dinner. Can you tell us just a little bit about what it means to yourself or maybe the student who's being honored?
So for the participating in the Chaffee Scholarship Dinner is a high honor for me, because, like I mentioned earlier, being a child, coming to the planetarium dedicated to him. At the time when I visited as a second grader, I didn't even understand the story. I didn't really know about Apollo 1. This was in the late 70s. And it was when I came home all excited about space, and that, there was this astronaut from the area, right? And my mom had to kind of explain it to me that this was, he had died in a fire along with 2 other astronauts. I thought, wow, that's amazing, right? There's a lot of risk involved with this and a lot of sacrifice that's required. And so, that always stuck with me. And now every time I go to Kennedy Space Center when I'm involved with these missions, I always try to find some quiet time to go to the Apollo 1 pad. And there's no one there. It's pretty much abandoned. There's hardly even a note of what happened there. But I always take some time when I go to just, it's right near the beach. You can hear the waves lapping up on the shore there. And I always think about what happened there. And it's great that I get to participate a little bit in continuing Roger B. Chaffee's legacy and what his family's been trying to do for all these years now with the scholarship. And I consider it a real honor to participate in that.
Well, that's a very powerful thought. Thank you so much for sharing that, and thank you for coming out to speak to our students today.
Sure, happy to do it.